Testing?
Huh?
Yeah. Hey everybody, welcome to Facebook Live and Hyperbaric Plus. And Keith is building a porch at a cabin somewhere in the mountains, I think. So he's not here this week. Josh is setting in. Josh is working on a couple of new product development deals with Ultra Botanica. And we had a deal on the radio, and that radio broadcast turned into a lot of questions with our clients, and I think they're important questions. So we'll get to Shy. We're going to try to drag Shy into this here in a minute. We'll hand the mic over to her. But what was the radio show about, Josh, and what do you think we need to clue our clients in?
I kind of don't want to sound like a broken record, but it still all goes back to metabolic health. The Shy story in particular is doing epigenetic testing and understanding what's going on. You know, for such a long time, our food has been corrupted, and people like to. We talked about acute disease and chronic disease, but we're all basically chronically disabled in terms of what we're eating, and it manifests as acute disease. And so we think that that's the problem. In my opinion, that's the symptom of the greater problem is that we're not taking care of ourselves the way that we should be. And part of that is unknowing, and part of it is lazy. But then we've gotten to an instant gratification kind of society, whether it's with our cell phone and the likes on your tweets, or the immediate cash, or whatever the case may be. We've gotten to a point where we think we can have an immediate result with a pill or a silver bullet. And the real silver bullet is changing the way that we approach health.
Well, this isn't across the board, but we have a lot of doctors that really don't dig down into what's causing our issues. And one of the biggest things that I got out of Shy being on the radio with us is her relationship with Chad. And we're asking her to give Chad a name. But
it's gonna be Chad.
Chad. Okay, so we now have a name. So she has a relationship. That guy's name's Chad. And she started, what really blew my mind was what she's been going through since I've known her for about 6 months now. And I didn't know all the details until she got back from Dallas. And she was loading all of her information. She was loading all of her labs, all of her genetic testing, all of her images. She went clear back to 2014 with putting all of that into chat AI. And then they started having a conversation, and she was calling out Chad. She was telling us about she had an argument with Chad, who is now Chad. And it was really interesting, the things that she found out. I guess the biggest thing would be the genetic testing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let Shy, she won't let me turn the camera on her, but I'm going to let Shy talk a little bit about her journey and how she found this genetic testing and what she thinks caused her surgery down in Dallas. And I'm just going to let her share what she wants to. So here we go.
Well, it just goes back to the epigenetics that Josh was talking. Like my whole life, I didn't have the proper genes to do the proper methylation, and I had signs since I was a baby, but nobody put two and two together. And I think at that time, nobody knew about it. It's kind of like being lactose intolerant back in the day. Nobody knew those things, And now I know that those were signs that I wasn't proper methylating. And I was very constipated since a baby. I had reverse reaction to some medicine. So those signs were always there. I just didn't know how to identify. And I grew up basically on bad food because I ate a lot of chips, a lot of cookies, and those are all folic acid enriched things. So that was my diet my whole life. So I am to blame for what happened. That's how I started uploading, and my whole life my MCV was high, which I was like, but why is this MCV so important? I didn't pay attention. Nobody paid attention because it was just slightly high. but you would go to the doctors and they were like, oh, this is nothing. Everything looks good. That's just a little high. It's just today. But no doctor went and looked with your other doctor, with your old exams, to be like, this is not just a one-time high. This is a pattern, you know. And I think that was my main thing for ChatGPT, is identifying those patterns. Nobody is identifying the patterns. So if they had put all of those together, they'll be like, well, you do have a methylation problem. It's very easy to see on your labs. You have low ferritin, you have high iron saturation, your MCV is high, you know, you have low vitamin D your whole life, you know, 30 is not ideal. So, like, the signs were all there. Nobody put together, and that's what chat did for me.
I think part of that though is your age, because you don't fit the mold. You know, you don't fit the mold for being unhealthy.
Yeah.
You would be an exception to the
Yeah,
rule.
even when
with
I
it.
said, I was like, I have this pain in my flank, because that's when I started to see. I went to the doctors and they were like, oh no, you're too young. No women at your age has kidney cancer. That's a cancer for old men. You know, like, you're not gonna have it. So yeah, nobody was really paying attention or looking at it, and I had to go to 8, 9 doctors for somebody to tell me something different than gas. You know.
And I wouldn't say too. I'd be careful about saying Chad is a medical practicer,
yeah, you
but what
have
Chad
to.
is really great with, in your case, was spotting the trend,
pattern.
right?
Yeah,
Which
that
nobody
was
else
for me.
was taking the time to do.
Yeah.
So we're kind of talking about that in the chamber with being open or not. You know, in med school, it's kind of muscle memory. You're just bang,
Yeah.
bang, bang, whatever your specialty is. So it's problem answer, and unless you're really looking at the history.
Yeah. And then, like, you go and you ask your doctor, like, do you think this is related to this? They'll be like, oh no, this usually we like, it's just bad luck, or there's no connection. But then little things that nobody was paying attention, you know, like I had a crack on my heel that would never go away. So I asked ChatGPT if that was it. And he was like, well, yeah, and then explained to me that how bad methylation could affect your keratin and all that stuff. So it was saying, like, and then I was like, well, my hair doesn't grow in 6 years. My hair stopped growing. It's like, well, that makes sense too. Your biotin and all that stuff. So it's all things that my doctor was just like, oh, there's no connection. ChatGPT explained to me, and they're little question things that the doctors are not going to pay attention to it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, you have to be careful. You know, you can't just follow blindly. Because one time he told me that I needed to take something. I was like, well, you told me that I can't take this with my gene mutation. And he's like, oh yeah, you're right, but you can take it for 3 days if you're just not feeling good now. You know. So.
And that's the thing, though, is like even all the medical professionals you saw over the time, that the epigenetic testing is a simple thing that maybe changed your direction had it been done on the onset.
Well, and I want to point it out that it looks like it's something new. The only new part here that I'm doing is adding ChatGPT, because everybody here on this table have already been doing epigenetics, but it's almost like a blind epigenetics. With the food, because you fix epigenetics with proper food. Because I asked ChatGPT, I was like, how come people back in the day, what did people before they had supplements do to fix these problems? They were like, well, they didn't have these problems because they didn't have enriched folic fake acid. You know?
Well, and we worked outside.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't
Sunshine.
sedentary. We didn't. Yeah, we weren't eating processed
Yeah.
food and just gorging ourselves. You know,
Exactly.
we were doing physical activity and mental activity
Yeah.
that
So-
we've kind of drifted from.
But everybody here has been fixing, you know, especially Nate, Robert, Pat, with the proper diet.
Right.
You know, they do the proper diet. They do a lot of juicing, which for people that have bad methylation, leafy green is what will fix you. And I start eating salad by the time I was 32. So it's embarrassing, but that's how I got here on this table, you know. So.
Well, I would like to reiterate that, yes, this does not take the place of your doctor. I was saying right off the bat that a lot of the doctors are not drilling down to this, and we have to be responsible for our own health.
Yes.
If we don't get all the answers that we think we need to get, or even if we get answers, there's no reason that we can't go out and ask questions and try to, you know, I bet you have given some of the results you've heard on Chad
To my
back to your
doctors?
doctor.
Oh, they said
I
there
mean-
was no connection. You know, they just blew me off.
So anyway, I think we can't be so focused with just our doctor. We have other tools,
We have to be
and
responsible for it.
it's our deal. You know, it's
Nobody's gonna care as much as you. Right?
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Something that you keep saying, and I just kind of want to drill down into it because I kind of put all the pieces together in our conversation. I don't think people understand what enriched means. When you hear enriched on any of your product labels, enriched means an addition of folic acid.
Yeah,
A lot of
synthetic
times.
folic
Yeah,
acid.
yeah. A lot of times it's a synthetic.
And a lot of kids' food have that. And I feel like I grew up on that. You know, kids, they give that especially to kids' food because they think kids need more. You know, so all the kids' food have enriched. Maybe that's why we have so many kids with ADD, ADHD, all.
Well,
you know,
yeah,
all this
that whole
stuff.
processed food.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same scientists that were with the tobacco company. You know, Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds are the largest food providers in the country, and
Yeah.
it's the same scientists that.
That did the
Yeah,
tobacco.
and so you know, it's in my opinion, for what it's worth, that's the unknowing part. We didn't know early on. It became a convenience versus how we were normally eating and nourishing ourselves, and so
Exactly.
we've gotten caught in a trap. And the only way to get out of it is to reverse
Yeah.
what we were doing.
Yeah.
And you see that with the epigenetics. We see it, you know, I look a lot at metabolic pathways and dysfunction as it relates to cancer, as it relates to neurodisease. And the same thing, it's all food. You'll see multiple metabolic pathways that are dysfunctional depending on what it is you're looking at. And it always has a counterpart in nature
Yeah,
to
fix
help
your
you bring
problem.
to homeostasis.
Yeah.
And but we've lost that because we don't follow the herds anymore. We don't have a varied diet, and so much it's a convenience rather than a nourishment.
Yeah. And I have a very childish palate, so I was still eating a lot of those food enriched in folic acid. And when I got pregnant, I think that was worse for me because when you get pregnant, you got to take folic acid. But nobody explained to me that folic acid is bad. And on that first pregnancy, I lost my baby, and the arm actually never fully developed too, you know, so he had a malformation. So I really believe that it was the bad folic acid because it.
Yeah, if you're not methylating.
Yeah.
Well, let's
And I was loading
expand.
up on that.
Let's expand on methylating, because what you've got is all these toxins in your system that are not going through your system and
Not
eliminating.
detoxing, yeah.
So talk a little bit about not methylating and how that could possibly have started this cancer.
Well, my whole life I was just like clogged, you know. I wasn't proper methylating, and I had no signs of proper detoxing. I never sweat. I don't go to the bathroom. I mean, the only thing I was doing is peeing, maybe once or twice a day, you know. Like everything was inside of me. How can that be healthy, you know? So that's I just didn't have open pathways,
Right.
and that's the main thing that everybody here does when they start treating cancer. They're like, "Are your pathways open?" That's so all of this is old study, just that I put on ChatGPT is the difference.
So explain the genetic testing, because even though we've talked about it a bunch, I don't know where you did it or what level it was or how much it was. I think people would have a great interest in
So-
what that's all about.
At first, because I listened on Joe Rogan, I listened Gary Brecka, I went and did at 10x Health. But I do not recommend because they only test 5 genes and it's $600 and it's not all the genes. There's a lot more to it. And the Grant Cardone is mixed with it. I just don't think it's a good thing. But it was good for me because it got me started for what I knew.
Right.
Now that I've learned more, I'm doing a Next Gen Labs, which is where the people that actually study epigenetics, like Dr. Ben Lynch, Dan Purser, Bruce Lipton, that's the ones they recommend. So, and that one is half of the price.
That was Max Gen.
Max Gen Labs. And that one will test like, I don't know how many, but I think it's over 100 genetics. And that's what they talk about. And now you know which gene to turn on and off. And that can be all done environmentally, you know. And when you can't do that with proper food and nutrition, then you can ask help for some proper supplements.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, yeah, or food substitutions,
Yeah.
whatever it is. You're working from a point of having knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, and I feel that my problem has started, one thing led to another, but mine was always in the gut. And then it keeps adding up, you know, and then I got Lyme, and then I had H. pylori, and then I took a lot of antacid because my heartburn was awful. I was just like ready, you know, the perfect storm. Everything was happening. But I think so I believe that all those things cause it, but the root cause started when I was born, and I couldn't go to the bathroom from day one.
Right.
You know.
So are you learning genetics? How are you continuing your knowledge in genetics now that you've got this test?
Oh, I listen to books 24/7. So yesterday I finished one. Today I'll probably listen to another one. But I don't know much about it yet. I'm just started learning.
But you have the information to give you some guidance.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So now I'm testing stuff. So I'm testing some supplements and seeing what works for my body. But I made an appointment with an actual epigenetics doctor in June, and I think I'll learn a lot there.
Okay.
And I think you just hit on it specifically, what works in your body.
Yeah.
Because we're all chemical and energy beings, and so we're all different.
Yeah.
Regardless,
And this is the
even though we'll have
personalized
common
medicine.
issues. Yeah.
So I think once you go to epigenetics, you can do personalized medicine and be like, well, this is why you got colon cancer, because your whole life this switch was turned off.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Or
So
this
it's
is
an
why yours
mTOR.
happened.
Yeah.
So it's not just MTHFR.
Right.
It's really your epigenetics. And when they test you for, this kidney cancer is not genetics. Well, it is genetic. You're just testing the genetic for that specific kidney thing. But how about all these genes that this could cause, and nobody's testing those? You know, I really think it is genetics, but nobody's testing it. And insurance can do that, because if they do, everybody's going to do it, and then we'll change from like a regular, this is what cures kidney cancer, to a personalized medicine, and that would bankrupt them. So they can't do that. So we have to do that ourselves. Because if they were to do that, everybody would do it. And then this is a special medicine for you, this is for you, this is for you. They can't do that.
Right.
And maybe not medicine, maybe food.
Yeah, even food. Yeah,
Some
because
good
food is
organic
medicine, you know.
to address
Well,
it.
we're moving that direction
Yeah.
slowly now, but at least we're moving that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys are finding this as interesting as I am. When we had our radio show, the whole thing I was thinking about was our next Facebook. And I don't know if we're getting any questions from our listeners yet, but I bet there's some questions here. Does anybody have a question they would like to ask? So we haven't hit any questions here at the round table. Yes, sir. Hold on.
I'm listening to some podcasts by Dr. Andrew Huberman and Chris Palmer, and the title is of this one is "Transform Your Health with Diet and Lifestyle." It's an Apple podcast, and I'd recommend everybody listen to it. It's about mitochondrial dysfunction and effect of environment on gene expression.
What is it called again?
And anyway, it's about mitochondrial dysfunction and the electrons and the flow of electrons and what stimulates those changes and expression.
That's mitochondrial health is the core. Yeah, absolutely.
Betty, hold on a second.
You mentioned energy, which I've become a believer in. Could you expound on that a little bit as it might relate to, I know exercise is the natural way to create energy fields in the body.
Right.
Electricity.
Well, and sun. Grounding.
Some of us are using microcurrent.
Right.
Are you familiar with?
I am.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
I'm not an expert. Paul probably talked about microcurrent specifically. I'm the old school, the original TENS kind of protocol. We actually, years ago, my father-in-law used to have a alternative health clinic, and we flew a Russian over that was actually doing the original electrical therapy, but he was also involved with the submariners, telepathic communication protocols. So it's kind of just everything has a frequency, and it can be measured. You know, your cells can be measured, and they differentiate depending on what it is. That's my belief, is that we have to be energy beings, because that's the only thing that would give us consciousness. Otherwise, we'd be inert, like, well, what we think is inert, you know, but inert like anything else.
We have a lot of people that come in here, Hyperbaric Plus, we have a lot of people that come in that are on supplements, and some of them are on a tremendous amount of supplements. Some of them are a little overwhelming, and I often ask, what if there was a way for you to be genetically tested? What if
That's
there
why
was,
I'm doing it, because
Yeah.
I have a lot of supplements.
Yeah, so we've got a practitioner we work with somebody comes in and needs a name. She does muscle testing. So she'll set you up on the first thing she wants to do is, what are you taking today?
Right.
So you take in your bag of supplements, and she'll test your supplements to your body through muscle testing. And then if she has some changes to do, she won't initiate that change again without muscle testing against what you're already taking. And obviously blood work and all those things, she does a $400 blood panel. It's not I'm sure she probably does genetics. I'm going to ask her that question.
Probably does, because
But-
she's integrative health.
Yeah. So we're going to have that question, but people go, well, man, that's a lot of money. And I go, what if half of the supplements you're taking are not doing you any good? They're actually doing you harm.
Well, I think that's the problem. People treat symptoms, and whether they're educated or not saying everybody doesn't get informed, but you can treat a symptom because you hear that this makes that symptom go away. I think antacids are one of the best examples, because they are total poison.
Yeah.
And it's counterintuitive. It's typically not enough stomach acid that's causing the problem, so it's not causing that sphincter to shut off, so you're getting an acid
I cured that
reflux
with
issue.
Metabolic neck,
Right.
because it was inside of that biofilm, so I finally got that out.
Right.
And Metabolic and Pylorx. That's how I killed my H. pylori. And
Yeah.
before I took antibiotics, and it wasn't doing.
Yeah.
But when you talk about, like you talk about your car, and you have insurance for your car, but you go and you get like an oil change. That's preventive.
Maintenance.
Yeah, maintenance.
Yeah.
This $400 maintenance for your body. This is an oil change type of thing. You
Well,
know?
and it kind of goes back to what Keith says, assess, don't guess, and it's easy, even educated people like to reverse that. It's easier to kind of think rather than know.
I don't mean to back up again, but there's so many things we talk about in here that I think's common knowledge. And if somebody's watching this and they don't know any of it, it was explained to me about methylated products that your car requires gas. If you take crude oil and pour it in your gas tank, it ain't going to run because that's not been processed yet.
Right.
So that's raw crude oil, and it's going to gum everything up, and your car isn't going to run. Well, that's the same thing that's happening when you take non-methylated products. You're
If
putting
you've
all.
got the gene mutation.
Now I'm talking about the MF gene.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the.
MTHFR.
And I'm sure there's other things that come into play in this whole genetic deal, but think about taking all of these supplements that are non-methylated and your body can't process it. That's exactly what you're
Well,
doing.
even sometimes whenever you take vitamin C, the
Right.
liposomal form is so much better.
Well, it depends. Yeah, I'm a lipospheric guy,
Yeah.
which is similar, but the same thing. All we are is a chemical. Our body is a chemical processing plant. So everything that you put into it is going to get broken down into a liquid. And if you just think of a refinery, it's going to go up a cracker, and you're going to sit there, and nutrients are going to come out and be utilized, or they're going to flush. But if you're not able, if you don't have whatever the catalyst is that's required to break
To
that
do
thing
that.
down, like the vitamin B issue with MTFR or HFR, then you're not able to process it. So you've got to come up with a strategy to do that.
Yeah.
Or you're just not getting the nutrient, and then
Yeah.
you're basically poisoning yourself by taking the non-methylated version.
Yeah, it really is.
in that case, because your body can't process it.
Yeah, and a lot of kids that do have that, when they have folic acid, they get very irritated. They, the book that I was listening to yesterday, they said that this doctor had cases where kids were eating the proper diet, that they would destroy the parents' car.
Mm.
And it almost took control of their body, you know, because they're just weren't, they were giving something that I don't know, the body didn't know how to expel, I didn't understand how it comes down to that level, but it changes your mental health, it changes everything, affects many areas, you know, and like if I take too much methylation too, I get very irritated.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to watch out how much I take.
Well, it's all about homeostasis.
Yeah.
You know, it's you can overdo anything, good or bad. You
Yeah.
know, good can become bad if you have
Excess,
too
yeah.
much of it, right?
Well, I don't know if there's any more questions here at this table, and I'm not seeing anything. Keith has a tremendous following. When Keith's in here,
Oh,
he
yeah,
runs
nice.
Instagram on one of the cameras, and we get a lot of questions. And Keith, we miss you today. We would love to have those
Where's he at?
questions. He's building a porch in the mountains at a cabin. That's all I know, something like that. So anyway, he's taking a week off to do some cabin work, getting ready for summer. Well, I'm sitting at a table full of people that are out there working on their own health. We all learn every time we sit around this table. We all learn something that we didn't know, and it gives us something to go back and start questioning. And that's what I encourage everyone to do. It's us. The one thing that I did like that hadn't come up yet, Shai, is you said, man, my ferritin my whole life
Yeah,
has been at a 7.
7.
And now what, after doing 4 months of hyperbarics?
Now it's 80. Yeah.
So her whole
And my
life.
hair is growing.
And her hair is growing.
That,
So
that hasn't worked for
yeah,
me yet.
yeah. Josh still has that problem. So anyway, it's great having everybody here. Again, this is hyperbaric.plus. All these videos are posted. The live Facebook Live gets posted on our Rumble page, and we are doing some Instagram as well. So look for us out there. Come see us. This is a lot of fun. We're all trying to get our health as optimum as we can, and if it wasn't for the experts that I surround myself with, we'd never get there. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.